Ever wonder why some stories just, click, they stick with you, but others just vanish?
It's fascinating, isn't it, how narrative is so much more than just entertainment. It feels, well, fundamental.
Yeah, like it connects us all. Roland Barthes nailed it, saying narrative is basically everywhere, always has been, since like day one for humans.
And what's really interesting now is seeing how that deep human thing is being used strategically as a communication tool.
You hear storytelling thrown around a lot these days. Marketing, business.
Right. And look, we should probably acknowledge up front, some folks get a bit wary. They hear storytelling and think manipulation.
Okay, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Let's be super clear. This deep dive, it's not about trickery. Not at all.
No.
You want to unpack how using, honest, smart storytelling can seriously level up your communication.
Exactly.
So if you're here hoping to get a real grip on something fast, you're definitely in the right place. We've gone through Latte Storytelling by Gerber, PQ, and Voicu, and our mission really is to figure out how using narrative strategically makes your message, well, stickier, more engaging, memorable, persuasive, creating that, what the source calls plus d'attraction dans le discours, that attraction in discourse.
Precisely. It's not about making things up. It's about strategic narrative to make your point resonate deeply.
Okay, so let's start there. The definition. What exactly is storytelling when we talk about, say, business?
Right. The authors define it as professionally using narrative, communicating about a brand or maybe a project.
Yeah.
And the aim is to get buy-in from stakeholders, partners, bosses, investors, customers, influencing what they do.
So it's about persuasion.
Yeah, but the key thing is blending logic and emotion. That's what sets it apart from just dumping data on people. It connects on that human level.
That totally makes sense. It's about making people not just understand it, but kind of feel it. Now, the book also talks about the academic side, narratology. Where did that come from?
It's interesting, actually. Its roots go back to Russia around the 1910s. Then it picked up steam in the West from the 60s.
Okay.
Narratology is basically the study of how stories are built, the structures, the techniques. But it's important to draw a line between just telling a story, the source calls it a receipt, and strategic business storytelling.
Ah, so there's a difference.
Yeah. Business storytelling uses narrative, sure, but it's got a specific goal. It's planned based on who you're talking to and what you want to achieve.
Narrative with a purpose.
Yeah.
And narrative itself. That's ancient, right? Aristotle and all that.
Oh, absolutely. Way back in Poetics, Aristotle was talking about what makes a good story. He stressed, a beginning and end, and that middle bit, the intrigue, the problem, all linked logically, cause and effect.
The classic structure. Beginning, middle, end.
Exactly. Even thousands of years ago, they knew structure was power. For us, that means any good business story needs that clear problem, the journey, and a resolution that clicks, that gives it that attraction.
Right. We see it everywhere.
We do. And this idea of core structures, Vladimir Prop dug into that with Russian folktales back in 1928.
Prop, right. I've heard of him.
Yeah, morphology of the folktale. He looked at tons of these tales and argued basically they all follow similar hidden patterns.
Even if they seem different on the surface.
No. He found recurring character types, hero, helper, donor, and common sequences. Usually starts with a lack or some harm and ends with it being resolved.
Like a formula.
Sort of. He's seen as a pioneer of structural narrative analysis. The point is, even really different stories often share these basic building blocks, and that's something you can use when crafting your own narratives to create that attraction in discourse.
That's wild. Like a grammar for stories.
It is. And later, narratology kind of shifted focus a bit. Thinkers like Genet, Umberto Eco, Paul Ricoeur, they started looking more at the audience, the receiver.
Ah, how we interpret the story.
Exactly, how meaning is made in the listener's or reader's mind, which is crucial for us, right? It's not just the story you tell, but how your specific audience connects with it. That's key for creating that attraction in discourse.
So crafting the story is only half the battle. You got to think about the reception. Now, you mentioned récit, that basic narrative. What are its essential bits?
According to the source, two main things. First, representation. So taking real or imagined stuff and presenting it as actions. And usually these actions are driven by someone, a character, with a goal.
Okay, intention matter.
Right. And second, it needs logic and time. A beginning, middle, end, usually chronological with clear cause and effect links. Understanding that basic structure helps build better business stories, ones with purpose, flow, and that attraction.
Okay, solid foundation. Let's switch to something super practical. personal branding. How does storytelling fit in there? Because that's huge for a lot of us.
Absolutely. The book really hits this point hard. When you're presenting, pitching an idea, whatever, you, the person, are a massive part of the persuasion.
Totally. We forget that sometimes, getting lost in the details.
We do. People invest in people, right? The book gives great examples. Steve Jobs and Apple. His story became Apple's story. That's powerful connection, serious attraction and discourse beyond just cool gadgets. Or think about Francois-André Barrière with the casinos, Coco Chanel, Henri Nestlé, Ladurée. In all those cases, the founder's story is baked right into the brand identity. Builds trust, legitimacy, that emotional hook.
It's like their personal story becomes the brand's origin myth.
Exactly. And then there's Karl Lagerfeld. Kind of a different take.
How so?
Well, he built such a strong, iconic personal brand first, that image, that persona. Then he leveraged that to launch his own fashion line, just called Karl.
Yeah.
His personal brand was the attraction.
Interesting. Using the personal brand to kickstart the commercial one. But what about, the rest of us?
Yeah.
Not exactly global icons here. Does this still apply?
Oh, definitely. The book makes that clear. It points to entrepreneurs who weren't famous starting out, but used their personal stories effectively.
Like who?
The Michele A. Augustin guys, the Innocent Drinks founders, Sandra Legrand from Caladia, Alexandre Pontier. They put themselves out there, became part of the narrative, adds authenticity, relatability. That really boosts the brand's attraction.
So it's not about already being famous. It's about being willing to share your why, your journey. Okay, so what questions should we be asking ourselves then if we want to build our personal brand story?
The book lays out 4 key ones. First, how much are you actually willing to share personally to boost your project or brand? It's a boundary thing.
Right, comfort level.
Second, how do you specifically define your personal brand? Like, what is it? The tangible bits.
Okay.
Third, how do other people see you right now? Your network, maybe the media. What's the current perception?
Ooh, that's a tough one sometimes.
It can be.
Yeah.
And finally, how can you actively shape that brand and use it strategically to help your project, to give it more, attraction?
Those are really good prompts. Makes you think. It's about being intentional.
Exactly. And there's a great quote from Barbara Boursier at Lucien Barrière Hotels. She talks about how stories are just part of a company's daily life. They shape the history, the legends.
The culture.
Yeah, the culture. For them, this household narrative defines who they are. It connects employees by highlighting founders, roots, the whole journey. They even did this cool thing for their 100th anniversary.
What was that?
They invited kids named Lucien to stay at their hotels. A really tangible way to link the history to now and definitely amplify that brand attraction.
That's clever. Memorable, too.
It is. And the main takeaway here is whether you're one person or a whole company, you got to be aware of your brand and actively shape it.
Because people are forming opinions anyway, especially online.
Right. And storytelling is the bridge. It translates your core message into something compelling, something people connect with and share, increases that overall attraction.
Okay, so where do you start? If you want to actually craft that personal brand story.
Right. First step, according to the book, nail down your communication goals for your project. What are you trying to achieve personally through communication?
Got it. Be clear on the why.
And then map your stakeholders. Who are they? How much influence do they have? What do they care about? What are their expectations? That groundwork is essential to build a story that actually resonates with them, gives it that needed attraction.
Makes sense. Understand the audience. Know your goal. Okay, let's shift again. Business plans. Huge area where storytelling seems crucial. That presentation can make or break things.
Absolutely critical. The business plan is your main tool for convincing investors, right? The book frames it as telling the winning story of how you'll hit your goals.
A story, not just a document.
Exactly. Deep down, it answers that big question for the audience. Why should I back this person and this idea? The story provides that plus d'attraction dans le discours. That pull, that data alone just can't.
It's about trust, enthusiasm. The narrative builds that. So what are the essential parts of this business plan story?
The book breaks it down using key questions. First block is about you.
Okay, the person behind it.
Yeah. Who are you? What's your vision? Where are you going? Why does this matter to you? What are your strengths, motivations, values? Why are you the one to make this happen?
Credibility and passion.
Right. What's your track record? Your personal connection to this? How will your team handle the tough stuff? It's all about establishing you and building that initial attraction.
Okay, makes sense. What's next after you?
Then it's your offer. What exactly are you bringing to the table? New product, service, concept? How does it make life better?
The value proposition.
What's the origin story of the idea? Why now? Is the timing right? Is there a real opportunity? Do people actually want this? You've got to show your homework, intuition, experience, research backs it up. That adds to the attraction.
So the what and the why now. What about everyone else doing similar things?
That's your competitors. Got to address them. What solutions exist? Who are they? How have they maybe paved the way, even created desire? What are their stories? What can you learn from them, good and bad? How do they present themselves? Showing you understand the landscape and have a strategy to stand out that boosts your story's attraction to.
Shows strategic thinking. And then who's going to buy it?
Your clients. Exactly. Who's your target? Your markets. What do they really need or want? How many are there? Crucially, will they pay?
The market validation piece.
Yeah. Will they buy again? Will they tell their friends? You need to show the scale size, price, loyalty potential. How will you reach them? And importantly, what story will you tell them to create that attraction? Got any early customers? What's the story there?
Demonstrating traction and growth potential.
Yeah.
And inevitably, the money.
Right. Your financial stakes? How much do you need? And specifically, how will you use it? Being clear about the funds needed actually builds credibility. Shows you've thought it through properly.
It's not just a random number. It's part of the plan, part of the story.
And the book really highlights the executive summary, that short bit right at the start. Super critical.
Your elevator pitch on paper.
Pretty much. It needs to pull all these threads together, why it'll work, key people, the need you're meeting, the risks. It's your first best shot at creating serious attraction and discourse.
The condensed power version of the story.
Exactly. And, the authors make this great point. Business is fundamentally human. Even the numbers represent people interacting. A sale, that's a story buyer, seller.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
They really encourage putting emotion into the numbers, using storytelling frameworks. There's an example from Romain Fusaro, founder of Calori.com.
Oh, yeah.
He talked about wanting his workplace to feel like home, tapping into that whole design-led office trend. That personal why drove his whole venture, added huge attraction to his pitch.
Makes the vision relatable. Humanizes the numbers.
Right. And ultimately, the book says the business plan answers those basic story questions. Why? What? Who? Where? How much? How? When? That framework applies across the whole plan: sales, finance, HR.
It's the skeleton of the story.
And Thibaut Di Maria, another founder mentioned, talks about entrepreneurship coming from a desire to serve, to build something solid, ethical, aiming to sort of enchant the world of work through your story. That vision, that enthusiasm, that's pure puis d'attraction dans le discours.
Wow. So it's about infusing it with purpose beyond just profit.
Absolutely. And all this planning, all the story crafting, it leads up to the pitch, the actual presentation.
The moment of truth.
Right. And the book stresses it's not just what you say, it's your ability to say it clearly, concisely, persuasively, using your story. That's how you maximize that crucial attraction.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, what are the big takeaways on storytelling in our professional lives?
I think the main thing is storytelling is just fundamentally human. How we make sense of things, how we connect, apply that strategically at work. It seriously boosts communication. By hitting both logic and emotion, it's a powerful way to build your personal brand, your company's brand, and to get ideas across effectively. Especially for something like a business plan. It just gives your message that extra pull, that attraction in discourse.
And critically, it's not about faking it.
No, absolutely not. Good storytelling, the kind we're talking about, is about being honest, authentic, connecting genuinely with your audience.
Making things clearer, stickier.
Exactly. Making complex stuff feel more accessible, relatable, memorable. That's where the real attraction comes from.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Think about the stories you're telling right now.
Yeah.
About yourself, your work, your company. How are they actually landing? Are they shaping things the way you want?
Yeah. How can you consciously, ethically, craft and share those narratives to build better connections, reach your goals?
Maybe that real power, that plus d'attraction dans le discours, comes from just understanding and skillfully using this ancient, timeless art of storytelling in your own way.